Right now, somewhere in your city, a stranger just walked past you and you felt nothing. No fear, no fight, just nothing. That feeling is so normal you don't even notice it. But for most of human history, that same moment could have ended in a spear through your chest. Here's the strange part. For decades, scientists believed our ancestors lived in peace, that violence was something civilization invented, not something we were born with. Then bones started coming out of the ground. Bones with arrowheads still lodged inside them. Bones that were 14,000 years old. Suddenly, the peaceful story of humanity started to crack. So which is it? Are humans natural killers wearing a thin mask of politeness? Or did we somehow invent war the way we invented fire? Stick around, because the answer is not what you think. If stories like this fascinate you, hit subscribe, because this channel exists to dig up the truth buried under everything we assumed was normal. Tell me in the comments, where in the world are you watching this from? To understand where war came from, we have to go back further than any war we've ever read about in a history book, back before writing, before cities, before farms, back about 3 million years, to a time when our ancestors weren't even fully human yet. For a long time, scientists pictured this era as calm. Small bands of early humans, wandering together, sharing food, living day to day with no reason to kill each other. It made sense. Why would anyone fight over land when there was no such thing as property? But in the 1970s, a researcher named Jane Goodall was quietly watching chimpanzees in Tanzania, and what she saw broke the peaceful picture completely. She watched a group of chimpanzees systematically hunt down and kill members of a neighboring group one by one over 4 years. It wasn't random, it looked organized. Patrols, ambushes, targeted violence against outsiders. Chimpanzees share about 98% of our DNA, so the question became impossible to ignore. If our closest living relatives already do this, did the seeds of war exist in us long before humans even existed? But something didn't fit. Not every group of chimpanzees behaves this way. Some communities go years without a single lethal attack. That single fact means violence wasn't guaranteed by biology alone. Something else had to trigger it: the environment, resources, crowding, fear of outsiders. That single detail changes everything, because it means war might not be a switch we're born with. It might be a door that only opens under the right conditions. Now, the real question isn't whether humans are violent by nature. It's what conditions turn that possibility into reality. The answer to that question was buried in the sand of northern Kenya, waiting 20,000 years to be found. In the late 1992, archaeologists were digging near a dry lake bed called Nataruk in what is now Kenya. What they found stopped them cold. 10,000 years ago, this place was lush green, full of fish and water birds, a paradise compared to the desert that sits there now. Scattered across that ancient shoreline were human skeletons, at least 27 of them. Men, women, even a pregnant woman with her hands seemingly bound. Many had fractured skulls. Some had arrow points still embedded in their bones. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't one person snapping in anger. It looked like a massacre. What makes it even more unsettling, these were hunter-gatherers. No farms, no cities, no kings, no armies in the way we imagine them. Just small groups of people living close to the land. If war needed civilization to exist, this shouldn't have happened at all. But it did, roughly 10,000 years ago, which pushes the origin of organized human violence back further than almost anyone expected. Before you keep watching, if this kind of hidden history is blowing your mind a little, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, because we're about to go even deeper into where this all began. Now it gets more complicated. Some scientists looked at Nataruk and said, "See, this proves humans have always made war." But others pushed back hard. They pointed out that Nataruk sits right next to freshwater, right in the middle of a dry period when resources everywhere else were vanishing. In other words, this wasn't proof that war is built into human nature. It might be proof of something even more specific, that when the environment turns hostile, when food and water become rare, ordinary people can turn on each other with terrifying speed. That raises an uncomfortable question. If 10,000 years ago it took a drought to trigger a massacre, what does it take today? Here's where everything changes. Around 12,000 years ago, something happened that quietly rewired the entire future of human violence. And it wasn't a weapon. It was a seed. Humans started farming. For the first time in our species' story, people stopped moving with the seasons and started staying in one place. Because now the food was staying too. Staying in one place changed everything about how humans saw the world. Suddenly, land wasn't just space to walk through. It was wealth. It could be owned. It could be inherited. It could be stolen. Anthropologists studying early farming settlements noticed something chilling. As soon as people started storing surplus grain, they also started building walls. Not decorative walls, defensive ones, because now, for the first time, there was something worth raiding. A hunter-gatherer with nothing has nothing to lose in an attack, but a farmer with a granary full of wheat has everything to lose and everything to gain by taking someone else's. This is the moment many researchers now believe true, organized, repeated warfare was born, not from evil, not from some ancient bloodlust hiding in our genes, but from an accounting problem. Suddenly there was a mine and a yours. Once that idea existed, defending it, or taking someone else's, became worth killing for. Excavations in the ancient Middle East, in places like Jericho, revealed some of the earliest fortified walls in human history, built roughly 10,000 years ago, right as farming spread. Stone walls, over a dozen feet tall, surrounding a town of maybe a few hundred people. Think about that. A dozen-foot wall for a town you could walk across in 5 minutes. That's not a wall built out of boredom. That's a wall built out of fear. That fear tells us something we rarely admit about ourselves. War didn't begin the moment we became capable of violence. It began the moment we had something worth being violent about. But that's only part of the story, because owning land doesn't automatically make you willing to kill a stranger for it. Something else has to happen in the mind first. This is where psychology enters the picture. In the 1950 seconds, a researcher named Muzaffar Sharif ran an experiment with 2 groups of 12-year-old boys at a summer camp, and what happened became one of the most famous studies in social psychology. He split the boys into 2 groups, kept them apart, and let each group bond deeply with their own team. Then he brought the groups together to compete. Within days, name-calling turned into raids on each other's cabins. Flags were burned. Boys who had never met a week earlier were now enemies over a summer camp. Nothing was at stake. No food, no land, no survival. Just identity. Us versus them. That single experiment revealed something enormous about human psychology. We don't need a real threat to start seeing outsiders as the enemy. We just need a group. Neuroscientists later found something that made this even stranger. When people are shown images of their own group succeeding, a reward center in the brain lights up. But when they see a rival group fail, a similar reward response fires, meaning our brains can find satisfaction not just in our own success, but in someone else's loss. Combine that wiring with the invention of property from farming, and you get the exact recipe for organized war. A brain built to bond fiercely with us and grow suspicious of them, placed inside a world that suddenly had things worth fighting over. Neither piece alone was enough. The biology alone gave us chimpanzees fighting over territory. The property alone gave us walls and fear. But together, they gave us something new in the history of life on Earth. Planned, repeated, identity-driven war between strangers who had never even met. So maybe the truth isn't that humans are born killers, or that we invented war out of nowhere. Maybe war was always sitting quietly inside 3 ingredients: capability, scarcity, and identity, waiting for the wrong conditions to align. The real question now is whether we're any better at noticing those conditions today. If this changed how you see the world, share it with someone who needs to see it too.